this unit we're going to talk about cellular respiration, which is a process crucial to all living things in that food energy, usually in the form of glucose, is converted into chemical energy in the form of this molecule ATP, which is used by all organisms for when they need energy. There are two types of cellular respiration. One is aerobic, which means in the presence of oxygen, and the other is anaerobic, which means without oxygen. Now, this flowchart here is to show you that there are two major pathways, the anaerobic and the aerobic, but that glycolysis is always the starting point for any of the types of respiration. So if we're going to go towards the aerobic respiration, the process proceeds through pyruvate oxidation, the citric acid cycle, and the electron transport chain. If we're going to do the anaerobic pathway, there are two types of anaerobic respiration. One is the lactic acid fermentation, and the other is called alcoholic fermentation. So glycolysis is the first step in all organisms when they're doing cellular respiration, whether it's aerobic or anaerobic. Glycolysis is the same in all organisms, which is one of the lines of evidence for a common ancestor for all living things. And in glycolysis, glucose is split and is used to make two molecules of what we call pyruvate and two net molecules of ATP. And we use the term net because a little bit of ATP is used to get glycolysis started, and then you end up getting two net at the end, like your net paycheck after everybody else takes the taxes out of it. So pyruvate then goes to the pyruvate oxidation pathway. And the pyruvate oxidation pathway is pretty straightforward. Pyruvate is converted to acetyl-CoA, which is shown here. And acetyl-CoA then goes to the citric acid cycle. So in the citric acid cycle, acetyl-CoA is converted into a different molecule, several different molecules actually, it's a great big cycle, and other molecules are produced in addition to ATP. And these other molecules are then used in a later step called the electron transport chain. This picture here is of the all-important ATP molecule. So in the electron transport chain, most of the ATPs that are produced in cellular respiration are produced. So this is aerobic respiration, and we get roughly 32 molecules. And so in the electron transport chain, electrons and molecules that were produced in the citric acid cycle help in the production of ATP. And it involves my favorite mechanical machine, which we call ATP synthase, which is a combination of a whole bunch of different proteins all working together and producing or putting together this ATP molecule, which is a really interesting process that you could read more about in your supplementary material. So finally, we get to anaerobic respiration, and this is the conversion of pyruvate, which is, remember, from glycolysis, to ATP without oxygen. So there are two ways to do this: lactic acid or alcoholic fermentation. In lactic acid fermentation, lactic acid is a byproduct, and you might have experienced this after hard exercise when you had a muscle burn. That burn in your muscles is the result of lactic acid buildup. And this happens when you've done extremely difficult exercise so that your aerobic stores of energy with oxygen in your muscles have been used up. And what you're left with is the anaerobic pathway to try to produce enough energy to keep you going. And then there's alcoholic fermentation, which produces all kinds of interesting social drinks. Ethanol is a byproduct, and this is what you use to make alcohol. Anaerobic respiration is, there's an important difference between it and aerobic respiration in that anaerobic respiration produces very little ATP. So the gist of all this is to make sure that you understand the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration, and then also the different major pathways in aerobic and anaerobic respiration.